Okay, so first of all, thank you, Amit, for having me in this session. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Ashish Agarwal. I am an independent Salesforce architect, trainer, and blogger with 25 Salesforce certifications and 850 Trailhead badges. So just to introduce myself, I have got about 25 years of experience in IT, out of which I've been working on Salesforce for the last 10, 11 years. Started as a consultant and moving through the roles of solution architect, technical architect, and then program architect with Salesforce itself in Singapore. I do want to thank you all for watching the recording of this session. I'm excited to be here and will do my best to ensure that this 1 hour or so that we'll be spending together is worth your while and you walk away with something useful and actionable. So let's go to the agenda. This session is going to be on dynamic forms and dynamic actions. We'll start with an introduction to dynamic forms, understand the benefits and where we can use this in our business. This will be followed by a demo, and then we are going to rinse and repeat these steps for dynamic actions. So what is a dynamic form? Now, dynamic form enables us to define the layout of a record detail page that contains fields and sections. This is what currently we do using the page layouts. But what makes this dynamic is that we can show and hide the sections and fields based on certain filter criteria. And this is something that page layouts do not allow us to do. So it provides more granular control to admins and consultants. In fact, dynamic forms has been the #1 requested feature on Idea Exchange, and that explains why Salesforce has introduced this feature. Now, do note that dynamic forms was introduced in summer 20, and it became GA or generally available in winter 21 release. But also note that currently it is in GA for custom objects only on desktop, but still in beta for custom objects on mobile and in beta for standard objects on desktop. So what is the benefit of using dynamic form? Why should we care about it? The first and foremost benefit is that this is an upgrade from the page layout editor that we have been using all this while. We can place the different sections and fields wherever we want and even on separate tabs that we cannot do with the page layout. Then we can define the visibility rules to show or hide fields and sections dynamically. It gives us simpler and convenient page layout management as we'll be adding, modifying, or removing fields from the Lightning app builder. So there is no need to switch to page layouts for fields and then switch back to Lightning pages for all the other components. We can cut back on the number of page layouts and use a single Lightning record page with different visibility filters for different profiles. And this also gives us a single assignment model, assign only Lightning page to profiles rather than assigning a page layout and a Lightning page. So what are the use cases? Where can we use this in our business? Now we can use it to meet different business requirements. So for example, we can show particular sections of fields on the page layout based on the values of other fields on the same object in the same record. So for example, if the opportunity reaches the negotiation stage, we can display the fields related to discounts like discount percentage and discount amount. Or let's say if you're working with leads, and if the lead source we specify as website, then we may want to show the field to capture the website URL. But if the lead source is referral, then we may want to show the field to capture the name of the person who made the referral. Now, what is interesting here is that it is not limited to the fields on the current object. With dynamic forms, we can take it one step further and display sections of fields depending on the values of fields on the parent object. And then we can also create separate layouts for separate profiles or even for separate devices like desktops and mobiles. So for example, for sales users, you may want to display certain sections and fields, but for support users, you may want to display a different set of fields and sections altogether. We'll understand that with the help of a demo. But before we get into the demo, let's take a look at the use case for this demo. So let's say that SIA Enterprises, it's a fictitious company. They're a long-time user of Salesforce, using it for marketing, sales, and support operations. Once the customer places an order, the shipment is tracked in a custom object called shipment. Now, admin and sales users can see all the fields in the object, but support users should only be able to see specific fields. So that is what we are going to be configuring. Without dynamic forms or before dynamic forms, this will require two-page layouts. We'll create one page layout for admin and sales, another one for support user. But with dynamic forms, we will specify filters in the same page, which will simplify the solution and will reduce the administration and maintenance overheads. So for example, let's say that tomorrow, if I need to add 5 new fields in the object that needs to be displayed to all the users. Now, if we have multiple page layouts, we will need to add those fields in all those page layouts manually. But with dynamic forms in place, we just need to add it in one place. So now it's time to see dynamic forms in action. Let me switch to the browser. Now let me walk you through the existing configuration of SIA Enterprises. So I am currently in the Sales app, and we have a custom object here called Shipments. Now if you take you to Shipments, you will see that there is a record here. And currently what you see on the shipment record is coming from the page layout. So we have not yet enabled the dynamic actions. Now this includes things like shipment number, the order number, shipment date, expected delivery date, status, and so on. And if we take a look under the hood, so if I go to the setup area and I'm looking at the shipment object, so you will see that there are some custom fields defined here. We have a page layout, and currently there are no lightning record pages. So dynamic forms are enabled in the lightning record pages. And that is what we are going to be doing. Now I also want to show you the users that we have in this org. So I have a user called Nick Adams. Now Nick Adams is a sales user, as you can see from his profile, which is custom sales profile. And then we have Peggy Rock. Peggy Rock is a support user. Again, as you can see, her profile is custom support profile. So we are going to be configuring dynamic forms for these two users. Let's go back to the shipment record page and enable dynamic forms. So to enable dynamic forms, all you need to do is to click on this gear icon, click on edit page. And then you click on this region here under the details tab. So what you see under the details tab is the sections and fields coming from the shipment page layout. Now, how do I know that? I can see the page layout name on the right sidebar where it says shipment page layout previewed, meaning that this is what we are currently previewing. Now, also notice that there is a new tab here on the left panel, on the left sidebar, which is called Fields. This tab has been added for dynamic forms. So this has started appearing after the Winter 21 release. Now, how do we upgrade to dynamic forms? So for that, I have selected the area below details, and then I'll click on Upgrade Now button on the right sidebar. It is going to display some information about the dynamic forms. Click Next. Now we can select the page layout that we want to migrate from. So since currently I have just one page layout, I see only one page layout, I'll select that. But if you have multiple page layouts, you can select any of those page layouts. And then what Salesforce will do is it is going to move all the sections and fields from that page layout to dynamic forms. Now also know that we have checked this box here, which says migrate fields and sections into an accordion component. Now, accordion refers to collapsible component in HTML, and we'll see what that means in a minute. So let's click on Finish. Let's save this. And when we are creating the lightning page for the first time, Salesforce will prompt us to activate the page. So click on Activate. We will assign it as org default, which means that all the users are going to see the same page layout. We'll select the form factors for both desktop and phone. and then click on Save. Now you will notice a subtle difference in the UI. It may not be that apparent as of now, but we have a field section and we have an additional field section. So before we do anything else, let's save it one more time, go back to the record detail page and see how it looks like currently. So as you can see here, I have fields and information. There is a subtle difference here, which you may or may not notice, but you also note that there is an additional field here, which has the system information. And as I click on this, this field is collapsed. So this is what is known as an accordion component in HTML. If I click on fields, then I'm going to see the details of these fields. Now what I'm going to do is to add a section for the support user. So let's make this form dynamic now. I'll go back to the gear icon, click on edit page. And I want to add a new section for the support user. So I'm going to select the Fields tab. We'll drag and drop this section here called Field section. It creates a new section on this page. I can give it a different label. So let's call it shipment details for support. I will leave it to 2 columns. 2 columns means that the fields are going to appear in 2 columns. So we'll go with that. We save it one more time. And then I'm going to drag and drop the fields in this section. So let me do that. I'll drag the order. I'll drag account. And then let's also drag shipment address. We'll go with shipment date, the status, and finally the tracking ID. So let's say that these are the only fields that support users can see. And I have created a section for them. So click on Save. If I go back to the record detail page now do note that I have not yet specified any filter condition. We'll do that in just a minute. But let's see what or how this page looks like. You will see that I do have a shipment details for support, but I also see the old information section here. Some of the fields are in both the sections, so that's also fine. It's appearing now. Now the next step is we are going to make it dynamic so that these sections are visible to the users who have logged on to the system. So click on gear icon, click on edit page. Now to attach a filter to a section, you select that section and then on the right side panel, click on add filter. Now there are different filter conditions that you can specify. So for example, you can specify the filter condition based on the value of a field in the record. You can even specify based on the form factor, so whether it's desktop or mobile, or some advanced conditions like the user profile and permissions, or even the parent record values. So here we are going to make use of the user's profile. So to do that, click on select. I'm going to select the filter list for users. And then I want to set it based on the user's profile. So I'll type profile, select profile, and we'll filter it based on the profile name. Click on done. Now I want to make this section visible for the support user. So operator is going to be equal. And then I'm going to specify the value as custom support profile. All right. Click on done. Now, the moment I have attached a filter condition here, you will notice an eye icon in orange color. Now, this is a visual indication that there is a filter condition attached to this component. And though we have done it for the section, note that you can also do it at the field level. So if you want to specify filter condition at the field level, you just select that field and you will see the same filter condition here on the right side panel where you can define a condition for this field to be hidden or shown dynamically based on the filter condition. I'm not going to do that. We'll just go with the section for now. Now, since for this particular section, it is going to be visible to the users with support profile, I also need to hide this section from the support user. So I'm going to attach another filter condition here. Click on add filter. Again, I'm going to follow the same steps. So I will select user, profile, name. And here, rather than choosing contain, I will say not equals to custom support profile. The reason I'm saying not equals to is because as per my use case or business requirement, I don't want support users to be able to see all the fields. And currently in my system, I just have support and sales users. So that's a hypothetical situation that I'm going with. Click on done. And you will see that the eye icon appears here also. Now, one thing you need to make sure is that make sure that you have components on the page that will be visible to all the users. Otherwise, users not matching these filter criteria will not see anything. So that is one thing that you will need to keep in mind. Click on save. And if I go back to my record detail page, now currently I am logged in as an administrator, and that is why I am not seeing that other section, because I said for this section to be visible, it will not be visible only for the support users. For all other users, it will be visible. And that is why I'm able to say it. Now let's log in as the sales user, Nick Adams, and see what happens. So I will go to setup, go to users, and click on login for Nick Adams. So I'm currently logged in as Nick Adams. As you can see here, I'll go to shipments. I'll open the same shipment record. And I am seeing the information section, which was the default section and which has all the fields. So this looks good, but let's check this same thing as a support user. Now, since I'm using a dev org, which has 2 licenses only, so I will need to disable Nick first before I can enable Peggy. So let me go to Nick's users record, deactivate the user, and then activate Peggy. Okay, once I have done that, let me log in as Peggy. We'll go to shipments. And now you're going to see that the information section that I was seeing earlier has disappeared. And shipment details for support, this is a new section that I created, is appearing. This is basically what dynamic form allows you to do. You can show or hide different sections and fields based on the filter condition. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. Now, before we get excited about the dynamic forms, there are some limitations that we need to be aware of. So note that dynamic forms is currently supported on record pages for custom objects only. It is generally available for custom objects only. For standard objects, you will still need to wait for a couple of releases more. The last I heard was that it should become GA for standard objects in summer 21 release. The other constraint is that you can add up to 100 fields per column in a field section component. Also, when you are migrating from page layout to dynamic forms, only fields and the sections are included. There could be other elements on a page layout like the custom links, the blank spaces. They will not be migrated as they are not yet supported in dynamic forms. And also note that during migration, only the first 100 sections in each region and the first 100 fields in each column are migrated. The rest of the fields will be dropped even if they are required fields. So once you have done the migration to dynamic forms, you will need to add those fields manually. Also, if you convert a section from 2 columns to 1, the new single column can hold only 100 fields and rest of the fields will be dropped. Blank spaces are not supported. This is something that you will need to live with for now. Also, dynamic forms do not work on pages based on pinned region and templates. So when you're creating a lightning page, you can choose the page template, and some of those templates include pinned region templates. Or you can create a lightning page template using Aura components. So dynamic forms currently are not supported for these kind of templates. Also, dynamic forms does not work in IE11. So users with IE11, if they try to access a page where dynamic forms is enabled, they are going to see an error. And these are the limitations that you will need to keep in mind when you are deciding, before you decide to switch to dynamic forms. So that brings us to the end of this section of presentation on dynamic forms. Next, we will take a look at dynamic actions. Now, similar to the concept of dynamic forms, dynamic actions allows us to control the visibility of action buttons from the Lightning app page. So if you take a look at this screenshot, on the top right-hand side, you are going to see some buttons here. These are the action buttons. Before dynamic actions, all these action buttons are controlled through the page layout. But with dynamic actions now, you can control it from the Lightning app builder. And like dynamic forms, we can control the visibility of these buttons based on certain conditions. So with dynamic actions, we can reduce the clutter of action buttons. You can choose precisely which action button should appear when. The other benefit is as an administrator or as a consultant, when you're configuring dynamic actions, you're going to see a live preview. I'll show you that in just a minute. Also, similar to dynamic forms, dynamic actions was introduced in summer 20, became generally available in winter 21. But please do note that it is again GA for custom objects on desktop, still in beta for custom objects on mobile, and still in beta for standard objects that includes account, case, contact, lead, and opportunity. So what are the benefits of dynamic actions? It is more or less similar to dynamic forms. The first and foremost benefit that you get is this is an upgrade from the Lightning page layout editor that we have been using all this while. So we can add, reorder, and remove actions from Lightning App Builder with modern UI and live preview. We can define the filter conditions to show or hide action buttons dynamically. It gives us simpler and convenient page layout management, as there is no need to switch to the page layouts to configure dynamic actions or action buttons. We can cut back on the number of page layouts and use a single Lightning record page. And it gives us a single assignment model, so we don't need to assign both Lightning pages and the page layouts. Okay, next question will be, where can we use this? So the concept remains the same as dynamic forms. We can show a particular button when a record reaches a certain stage. So for example, you may want to show the tracking action button when the shipment is in transit. Before the shipment is in transit, there is no benefit of tracking, or the tracking is usually not available. So that's one thing. You can display or hide action buttons based on the pick list values. So for example, if the shipment is delivered, if you no longer want the user to change the record owner. Similar to dynamic forms, you can also show or hide action buttons based on the values of fields on the parent object. And then you can control the visibility of buttons based on the profiles or the form factors. So again, let's take a look at the demo, and our use case for the demo is, so as per SIA Enterprises policy, every shipment record is owned by a sales rep who is responsible for ensuring the timely delivery of goods to customers. And as per SIA Enterprises, once the shipment is delivered, the owner can no longer be changed on the shipment record. So this is what we are going to configure using dynamic actions. Also, SIA Enterprises does not want support users to be able to access the printable view of the shipment record to be able to print or download the information. They can just answer the queries on the phone, and any further follow-up needs to be done by the sales user. So we'll work to We are going to configure dynamic actions to meet these two requirements. Now let me switch back to the browser. So log out as Peggy. And I will go back to my page, just refresh it. So what we are going to do here is, first of all, currently these action buttons that you see here, this is coming from the page layout. So we are going to switch this to dynamic actions. And then we are going to specify some filter conditions for some of these action buttons. So how do I do that? Click on the gear icon, click on edit page. And to convert this to dynamic actions, you need to click on this highlights panel. Now, when you click on highlights panel on the right sidebar, you are going to see the prompt to upgrade to dynamic actions. So we are going to do that. Click on upgrade now. Now, when you're upgrading, you have two options. Either you migrate all the buttons from the existing page layout, or you start from scratch. So I'm going to start from scratch. Click next, and then click on finish. Now, once I have done that, you will notice that all the buttons have disappeared. So if I just click on save and go back to the record page, I don't see any button except for follow. This is because I have enabled the chatter feed on this object, and that is why I'm seeing this. But I do have the option to hide this also. So let's go back, add some buttons and add some conditions here. I'm going to click on the highlights panel again. Now, if you want to hide this follow and follow button, there is a separate checkbox for that. You can do that here. But what I want to do here is I want to add some action. So let me do that. To add the action, I'll click on add action. And if you click on this field here, you are going to see all the actions that is available on this object. This includes the standard actions, the quick actions, and the global actions. So let me add the commonly used buttons, which will be like edit. Next one, let's say clone, delete. And then I'm going to add the action for change owner. And also for printable view. So I have added these actions buttons here. As you can see here, this is the live preview where you can see all the buttons that you have added. Now you will notice that I can see only 3 buttons, and then the rest of the buttons will appear in this drop down. If I want to change that, I can change the number of visible action buttons. So I will change it to 5. And as I change it to 5, I can see the live preview. It is now displaying the 5 action buttons. Let me save it. And now, as per my requirement, what the requirement states that if the shipment is delivered, nobody should be able to change the owner of the record. So for that, the way I will configure that is I'm going to attach a condition to the change owner action button. I will add a filter here. And this time I'm going to specify the filter based on the value in a record field. So I'm going to select the filter type as record field. Select the field as status. And I'm going to specify the status is not equals to delivered. So which means that this button will be visible when the status is not delivered, but if the shipment status changes to delivered, then the button will disappear, as CI Enterprises does not want users to be able to change the record owner. So click on done, click on done. And again, you can see an eye icon in the orange color. This denotes that there is a filter condition attached to this action button. Now let me also attach another condition to printable view. So my requirement was that support users should not be able to see this button, the printable view of the record. So I'm going to add filter, click on advanced, And this is going to be based on the user profile. So I'm going to select user, profile, profile name. And I will say display this button when the profile name does not equals to custom support profile. Click on done, click on done, and let's click on save. So I have attached the filter condition to two action buttons. One is based on the record status or the value of the field in the record. Another one is based on the user profile. So let's take a look at this now. I'll go back to the record page. And as of now, I can see all the 5 buttons. Also, my shipment status is currently dispatched. So if I change the shipment status to delivered, and you will notice that the change owner button has disappeared. So let's just see it one more time. Now my current status is delivered. The button is not appearing. If I change it back to something other than delivered, that button appears automatically. And also let's take a look at the printable view. Now I can see this button because currently I'm logged in as system administrator. So if I click on printable view, now this is the view that CI Enterprises does not want the support users to be able to access. So if I go to users again, let me refresh this page. I'm going to log in as Peggy, who is the support user. Go to shipments, open the record. And now you will see that I don't see the printable view button anymore because I'm logged in as a support user. I also don't see the change owner because okay, I think for the change owner, okay, for change owner, I will need to see why it's not appearing. Okay, yeah, sorry, I get it. The change owner is not appearing because I am not the owner, or the Peggy is not the owner of this record, and that is why she can't see the option to change the owner of the record. But has she been the owner, and if the status was delivered, she will not see the option to change the owner. So that is basically how the dynamic actions work. You can attach the buttons, or you can attach the filter conditions on which button should be visible based on what condition. Now let's go back to the presentation. Now here are some extra bytes for you. So you may have some questions before you decide to switch to dynamic forms and actions. Your first question may be, can I undo dynamic forms and actions? So for example, once you enable it, and if, let's say, if you want to go back to the page layout, can this be done? So the answer to that question is that yes, dynamic forms and actions, this is not a one-way street. Even if you have enabled it, you can always disable it and go back to page layout. Now, how do you do that? So if I go back to browser, and let me go to this page layout one more time. Dynamic forms and actions are enabled on the Lightning page. So first thing you will need to understand is that it's not an org-wide setting, or it's not even an object-wide setting that once you enable it, it cannot be disabled. So if you want to go back to page layout, the way you can do that is again, go to edit page, go to activation, and you can remove this page as an org default. So the moment you remove it as org default, Salesforce is going to display you the standard page, which will be using the page layout. This Lightning page that we have configured for dynamic forms and dynamic actions will no longer be visible, or will no longer be available. So that's number one. The second question that you may have is, can I enable it only for a subset of users? And again, if you have hundreds of users, if you want to enable dynamic forms and actions for only a subset, just let's say that you want to do a pilot launch, you don't want to disrupt all the users. Again, the answer to this question is yes, this can be done. The way you are going to do it is, again, when you're going to activation, you are just going to activate it for a particular profile. So rather than setting it as org default and changing it for everyone, you can enable it just for a particular profile. So you click on assign to apps, record types, and profiles. You can select the app, click next. You can select the form factor. You can select the record type. I don't have any record type here, so I'll just go with master. And then here you can select the profile. So let's say I just want to enable it for sales user, but not for service user. I can do that. I can select the profile from this. So you don't need to enable dynamic forms and actions for everyone. And then the third question that you may have is, how do I use dynamic actions with record types? So one of the benefits of using record type is that we can define multiple page layouts based on the record type. And then we can assign these page layouts to different profiles. So to understand how dynamic actions can work with record types, let me do some whiteboarding here. So let's say that this is the current scenario. I have a shipment object, which I have shown to you just now. And let's assume that this shipment object has 3 record types. So I have the record type air, sea, and land, which is basically denoting how the shipment will be sent, whether it's by air, by sea, or by land. And I have created 3 different page layouts for these record types. So for air, I have the page layout 1, sea page layout 2, and then land is page layout 3. And also I have assigned these page layouts to the same sales profile user based on these record type. Now this is how we are going to do it currently. So I will need to have 3 page layouts if I want to hide certain fields or show certain fields based on the shipment type. How is this going to work with dynamic forms? So the way we can configure it with dynamic forms is, I will have again record type 1, which is air, record type 2, which is sea, and record type 3, which is land. Now, rather than creating 3 different page layouts, I will just create 1 page layout, lightning page. But what I can do is I can have 3 sections here. So let's say I will have dynamic form section 1. I'll have dynamic form section 2 and dynamic forms section 3. And when I'm having the dynamic form section 1, I can attach a filter condition that this dynamic form section 1 will be visible when the record type is RT1. Dynamic form section 2 will be visible only when the record type is RT2. And the third one is for the RT3. So I do not need to create 3 different page layouts as I needed to do without dynamic forms. And rest of the things will remain the same. So I will still have that sales user profile. And I will assign this page layout to this profile. Now this is a benefit because we do not need to create the different page layouts. We can just control it with dynamic forms. And you can take this approach when the difference between the page layout is not significant. So in this case, like for air, I just need to show some air shipment related fields. For sea and land, I just need to show a couple of fields that changes based on the shipment type. I can take the approach of dynamic forms. But if the difference is significant between the record types, where let's say you need to completely change the set of fields that needs to be displayed, you can still take the same approach. So in that case, this is how it is going to look like. So I will have record type 1, record type 2, record type 3, and I will still create lightning page 1, lightning page 2, lightning page 3, and assign that to sales profile. So if the difference is significant, significant between the record types, you may still want to follow the same route of creating different page layouts. But if the difference is not significant, you will probably be better off creating the dynamic forms, and defining sections, and then attaching the filter conditions. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation, and that basically brings us to the end of this. Now, what I have done here is mentioned some useful URLs that will give you all the information that you need on dynamic forms and actions. Now, this includes links to release notes, help articles, YouTube videos, and I've also mentioned link to my blog post, which contains a step-by-step guide on how to enable dynamic forms and dynamic actions in Salesforce. And that's all from my side. So over to you, Amit.